Thank you so much, Jim. It's such an honor and a pleasure to have you in this conversation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Jim, I've read so much about you in my last 7 to 10 days of research that I was doing, and I'm really excited. But before we get to the kind of accomplishments that you have, the kind of education that you've done for yourself and your doctorate, the kind of good work that you've been doing at the education level, and more than that, I think at the humanity level, I would like to know more about who Jim is. So if you can just share one of your early childhood memories that today also bring a smile on your face.
I was born in West China.
Okay.
In the aftermath of the Communist Revolution in 1949. And my parents were missionaries. We went then to Taiwan after we were expelled from China. And I grew up the son of a conservative Baptist missionary. I had the very, very good fortune to have my first numinous experience in a Buddhist temple when I was 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I came into the temple and I saw sitting on the floor before the icon of the Buddha on the far side of the temple, a monk who was completely still. And in my little 5-year-old boy curiosity, I kept looking at him and he didn't move. And then at some point, a fly came and lit on his forehead and walked across his forehead, and the monk didn't move. And then the fly flew away, and then the fly came back and started to walk across his lips. And that monk didn't move. And as I became absorbed in the motionlessness of that monk, I went through an inner transformation because I understood that he was somewhere else. And from that moment onward, my life was changed. And it began a quest that is with me till the present day of honoring the mystery of silence and honoring the wisdom of action and understanding that the two are somehow, in a way we don't fully understand, interconnected. So I would say that as I look back at my childhood, that experience very early on shaped quite literally the rest of my life. And I've been profoundly grateful to have been graced by that occurrence as a very young boy.
The mystery of silence and the wisdom of the action. But how do you bring these two together in today's time, what you do, and how has it shaped your character and the kind of work that you are involved in today?
I think that the interaction between stillness and the dance is in many ways like the yin and the yang of the Tao. If you look at the way we experience life, almost everything is in opposites. We have light and darkness, we have male and female, we have up and down, we have all kinds of polarities in and through which we navigate our existence. Without the polarities of existence, we wouldn't be able to define existence. I think particularly in the Western world, we're so caught up in the polarity of action. You know, the great archetypal formation of Western civilization is, Sir Galahad slaying the dragon to save the maiden. We're born into activity. We're born into industrious production. And I think for me, learning the truth that you need to always go to your opposite. So if you're hyperactive, you need to go into the stillness. And I think the most important thing I've learned over my lifetime is the importance day by day of your personal practice, the day by day going into the silence, day by day, as I'm doing more and more recently, just sitting quietly for 30 or 40 minutes and listening to your heartbeat in a spirit of gratitude and thanksgiving for just simply being alive. And I think that for me, that interactivity between mindfulness and meditative practice on a daily basis has informed my kinetic action in the world, because I'm very dynamic. I'm a builder by temperament. I'm an alpha male, sort of by character. And I think mindfulness has mitigated against my more aggressive, violent tendencies as a North American white male. So it's been very important in my life.
So Jim, tell me about a day in the life of Jim. How does that day phased out?
Well, I get up every morning and I spend the first, I would say, 2 hours in practice, what I call practice. For me, it's yoga and different forms of exercise, then meditation. And I allow myself 2 hours because that allows me to go into spaciousness rather than worried about running out of time. Then I just embark on my day. And I go through everything that I do as a president of a university, and everything that that requires. Then I get up actually in the middle of the night between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock p.m. for another hour to meditate. All the mystics from all over the world and from time immemorial say that the time between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock a.m., some say ideally around 3 a.m. in the morning, your pineal gland and your pituitary glands in your brain are the most attuned to cosmic energies. And I can tell you from direct personal experience, the meditations one has in the middle of the night are of a different quality than the meditations you have during the day. And it sounds strange to get up in the middle of the night and just sit there, but it has been a powerful balm on my life and has given me very deep insights that have then empowered me as I go throughout the rest of my sleep and my day. So that's my basic rhythm. I walk exercise. I believe, as the Greeks taught, that your body is the temple of divinity. It always anguishes me when I see people who are grossly overweight or eating junk food or smoking cigarettes and engaging in activity they must know is destructive, because when your body gets sick, nothing else matters. You're sick.
Yeah.
And if you take care of your body and you're with your body and you're exercising your body and you're meditating your body and you're honoring the beauty of life around you, the quality of your life, at least the quality of my life, becomes enhanced in immeasurably important ways.
I'm sure. Yeah. So, Jim, let's dig deeper into the kind of work that you are involved in. And what I understand is it's driven by your practices, the meditative and the mindfulness practices that you have, that keeps the sanity in place. Now, what was that moment, or what were those moments that actually inspired you in your life when you decided to dedicate your life to education? What was the defining moment in your life?
Well, one of the defining moments uh, in my life that led me on the path that I'm now on happened actually when I was at Harvard. I went there after my BA degree to get a master's degree, and I met a young man just about my age. We were walking to my home in Cambridge, Massachusetts, there where we were both studying and I was living. And we were going down the road, and he stopped me and he said, "Jim, do you know that in the last 24 hours, over 50,000 children died of completely preventable diseases? Do you know the superpowers have over 50,000 nuclear weapons on hair trigger alert right now?" And I was kind of shocked because it came out of the blue. But that stopped my world because I hadn't taken that in. I was loving my education. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, maybe be a professor or something. But up to that point, I'd been rather self-centered. And all of a sudden, I took in the gravity of the global crisis, that there's something dramatically out of equilibrium in the species Homo sapien. And I eventually then went to Cambridge University, where I did my PhD dissertation on the question of why is it that after 4.5 billion years of evolutionary life on planet Earth, that our species in our generation has brought the entire life process to the brink of extinction through thermonuclear war and now climate change.
Yeah.
That seemed to me to be the most important question in the world. And out of my exploration of that question, my dissertation was written, and a number of books emerged, and I worked for a significant period of time in Soviet American relations, where I worked in what they call citizen diplomacy, just ordinary citizens trying to make the world safer. And I had the great privilege of working with Mikhail Gorbachev for about 10 years after his presidency in the Soviet Union. And then that is what led me eventually to education, because Plato in the Republic says that the true revolution is not replacing one system of government by another, one act of coercion by another, but in shaping the minds of the new generation. Because if you can shape the minds of the children, you help shape their lives. And so I think in part because I was meditating, in part because I became aware of the almost catastrophic situation humanity finds itself in, I dedicated my life to the greater good. How can I every day use my energy to save the world, to help children, to empower people everywhere with the mindsets and the skill sets and the tool sets we all need to navigate an increasingly complicated and dangerous world.
Let me just absorb everything that you mentioned. Thank you so much, Jim, for bringing the focus on the importance of education to deal with the challenges and the biggest threats the humanity is facing today. So whether it's a thermal nuclear weapons or the climate change or the other threats that we are facing on day-to-day basis. And today's time, it's COVID-19 or what we are talking about, the Black Lives Matter or the deforestation that the world is going through, and how education can play a very vital role to shape the minds of the young citizens of the countries of this world. You also spoke about humanity. Let me ask a very basic question, and I would love to hear your views. What does being human mean to you when we are talking about in the context of humanity? Because on one hand, the world is divided because of different religions people have, and they take pride in saying that I'm a Hindu, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Jewish, I'm a Buddhist, right? But at the same time, the very philosophy why religions were made in the initial space, as per my limited understanding, is to unite people. And to a large extent, it is becoming a reason for most of the differences the humanity is facing. So what's your understanding of being human? And how can humanity serve this world? And is the need of the hour?
I think for me, the words of Jalāl Rūmī, the great Persian poet, says it the best. You know, where he has a poem where he says, I'm neither Christian nor Jew, no Hindu nor Muslim. In the end, I'm simply a breathing human being. I breathe. I'm alive. And I think that's what I was taught as a young boy, having my first spiritual experience in a Buddhist temple, but being the son of a Christian missionary. That it doesn't matter what you believe. What matters is how you live and how you respect diversity. And I think that truth has sculpted my curiosity. And one of the reasons why I've traveled so relentlessly all my life is just to discover other ways of being human that are different than mine. I think that more recently, particularly given the challenge of climate change, we humans are, I think, need to completely revise our notion of being human, not as a species separate from all the other species, but as simply an expression of Mother Earth. You know, we are not separate from nature, our nature. We're not separate from the environment. We are the environment. We are the earth. And I think that's really important. You know, it was John Lovelock, the great British scientist in the 1970s and 80s, that developed the what he called the Gaia hypothesis and the Gaia theory, because it's now gaining credibility in the scientific world. And he was the first one as a scientist to say that the earth is not just a lump of rock underneath our feet. The earth is a living organism. Earth is intelligent. The earth is compassionate. The earth regulates itself with extraordinary dexterity. And so if we think of humanity as not separate from the earth, but as an expression of earth, we then ask ourselves, what is the purpose of humanity at this moment if it's not to save the earth? The earth produced humanity for a reason. I'm here, you're here for a reason. And that reason is not just us. Our reason is because we were produced by an intelligent being. Everything we can think, feel, contemplate, imagine comes from the earth, who thinks, feels, contemplates, imagines. Everything we are has been given to us by Gaia, by earth. So for me, increasingly, day by day, my sense of my humanity is simply an expression, drop in the lap of the mother. I am the mother. I am Earth. And I'm here for a very specific reason, I believe, to save it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing this, Jim. As I'm just listening to you, that I am the Gaia, or I'm the expression of this Mother Earth. And we are the reflective organs at the end of the day, because that's one of the unique traits that human beings are blessed with. And if we don't leverage that, what good are we doing to humanity? What good are we doing to Mother Earth?
Yep.
So, let's talk about the cause that you have taken a stand for, education. What do you think? What is the biggest difference? What is the biggest gap between what the best universities of the world teach you and what is the need of the hour?
Well, the gravity of the crisis of education and the opportunity hit me in 2010 when I read a study, a CEO study by IBM. They interviewed, I think it was 1,700 CEOs and 3,600 students in universities and companies in 60 nations around the world. And their conclusion was there was not a single institution of higher education anywhere that was preparing young people to navigate through hypercomplexity. Hypercomplexity was a term that was rather new back then, and that is a state of affairs where different complexities come together in a way that it is bigger than the individual human mind can understand. If you think of going into economics or going into sociology or history or geography or literature, these are different silos of complexity. But if you understand that they're all interconnected with everything else, your mind explodes, and there's no way for a single mind to understand the totality of the complexity in which we find ourselves. It's a state of affairs, as we're witnessing during this pandemic, where a small event anywhere in any of the sectors can ricochet through the global system and have major effects everywhere. And in an unpredictable, sometimes positive, sometimes negative way. So when I realized that this was true, I had been the president of a small graduate school in California by that time. I believed in education, but I hadn't really questioned the edifice of education. I had kind of assumed that the way we had been educating our young people was basically the only way to do it. And if you think about it, whether it's in the East or in the West, we're still educating ourselves like they did in the Han Dynasty in ancient China, or in Plato's Academy in ancient Greece. For thousands of years, children have gone into classrooms, sit behind desks, take lecture notes, take tests, get grades, and if they're good at memorizing information and expressing themselves in analytical logic, they get passed. But what the IBM study indicated is that's not what you need in hypercomplexity. To navigate hypercomplexity, it's not it's who you are. Do you have emotional intelligence? Can you engage in cross-boundary team building? Do you have empathy? Do you have the capacity for critical thinking? Do you have leadership? Can you lead a group? Can you lead yourself? Can you see the system as a whole? Or are you just seeing it from the point of view of the part? And all of a sudden I realized, whoa, not only is the current educational model completely dysfunctional, and it doesn't matter whether you go to Harvard or Cambridge, as I did, or you go to the University of Beijing or a local high school, all of them are doing it the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of them are doing it the same way. And yet we have to completely change how we're educating. We need to certainly have knowledge, but the knowledge needs to be gained in a collaborative, creative process of discovery. It's not about memorizing information to take a test in a competitive environment. That's the absolute worst way to educate. All the data, East and West, shows that when you memorize information for a test, you've forgotten 80% of what you've memorized within 30 days.
Yeah.
But if you work with your peers, your other students, and you collaborate and you don't take a test, but you do a creative assignment, you learn more, you remember it longer, and you feel a lot better about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You also need personal development. There's hardly a university in the world that teaches emotional intelligence or mindfulness. But you need to learn what they call soft skills. In fact, all the data shows that the most important skills in the world right now, particularly in a world of increased automation, robotics, artificial intelligence, is not more science, technology, engineering, and math. You can get all that out of a smartphone. What you need is to be able to get along with one another. What you need is to be able to collectively think out of the box together. What you need is emotional intelligence. If your boss criticizes you, do you get over it in 3 minutes, or does it take you 3 months? How do you manage your emotions and your expectations? Data shows that the people who get hired for jobs, they're the ones who interview well. If you think about your company or your institution, who are the people that get promoted? They're the nice people. They're the friendly people. They're the people that get along. Those are soft skills.
Yeah.
And so that was another aspect of we began to emphasize as we created Ubiquity University: knowledge in a collaborative environment, personal development, which we called self-mastery, and finally, and equally importantly, what we called social action, social impact. The world is about ready to self-destruct. Scientists are telling us we're literally running out of time. And this next 10 years, particularly this next 2 to 3 years, are the most critical years in all of human history, because climate change is now spinning out of control, accelerating rates of species extinction, water scarcity, deforestation. 50% of all the species that existed 50 years ago no longer exist. And with the ice melting and with methane pouring out of Siberia, we have got to embrace the notion that academic pursuit is not just about filling your head with knowledge. It isn't even about developing soft skills. It's coming together to solve global challenges.
Yeah.
So that's how Ubiquity has been shaped, and it's a very exciting endeavor, Gaurav. I have to tell you, to be watching young people, wherever they are in the world, come alive almost for the first time in the realization of what true learning can really be about.
And that is the philosophy of Ubiquity University.
That's correct.
Yeah. So, Jim, here is my next question. Now, on one hand, since you spoke about that this research was done the year 2010, so that means the world is aware of this for so long, right? And yet there are universities like the Harvards and the Whartons and the INSEADs of the world. They continue to push the cognitive understanding. What do you think is the biggest challenge for all these universities that's stopping them to get into this space and teach what is the need of the hour? What would we do after 10 years? If we don't have the earth to live in, if we don't have water to drink, if we don't have the climate to breathe in, what would we do of the best education that we are getting in these universities?
It's a great mystery. The inertia that needs to be overcome to do the obvious. I learned this with my mother, actually, who was a rather plump Italian woman, and she loved to eat, and she loved dessert. She loved to cook, and she knew that she was overweight, and yet she would eye that piece of chocolate cake and decide very firmly that she was going to start her diet tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it became an object of great humor in our household. But, as I've observed it in myself, there's a kind of a sludge in our psyches. There's an inertia that we keep doing the same thing over and over, even if we know it's counterproductive. And you see this during the pandemic, where we know we need to change, but our governments are saying it's time to get back to business as usual, without any sense of reform or any sense of embarrassment. And it's true the world over. And it's a deeply puzzling phenomenon that people won't change, even though they know they must change, until the crisis comes that explodes whatever it is that they are experiencing as normal. And then oftentimes it's too late. And oftentimes it's impossible to bring about the changes that, had they transacted them just a few weeks or months earlier, would have spared them the catastrophe that has now wiped them out. And you see it in the world today. And that's why leadership is such an important phenomenon in a crisis. It's precisely what we need to embrace proactively as quickly as we can.
And in fact, that's what my next question is to you. What are your views on the future-proof leadership that we need in today's world? And, and as I'm just talking to you, as I'm reflecting, what future am I talking about? We only have 5 years, 10 years in our hand before the climate would go out of our hand, out of our control. And then we would be regretting. There would be a lot of guilt and no solution in our hand.
Yeah.
So what are your views on this?
Well, I think one of the things I've learned is that leadership begins within. Leadership, I think, is a form of self-mastery. Leadership is the willingness to make the changes in your own life that are requisite for the kind of success that you seek to achieve. My experience of leaders is that they're always very disciplined about who they are. They're willing to take a stand. They're willing to make decisions that affect other people. They're willing to pursue goals through thick and thin. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett were interviewed on this question of leadership that I saw at the interview some years ago. And they were asked independently, but they came to the same answer. They said the key to leadership is perseverance. Setting a goal and then doing everything required to implement this goal. And I think that's in some ways the bottom line, to be, hitch your wagon to a star, as my father always used to tell me. And then once you hitched your wagon to that star, you got to get to the star. And whatever it takes is something that you have to discipline yourself to do. Now, the second question is, what do you do if the world is burning? What do you do if the world is under increased crisis? It's no longer just a matter of you becoming rich or becoming famous or doing X or doing Y. All of a sudden, you're called as I was called back during my graduate school days, to realize that my life was not about myself. That given the critical urgency of our time, my life needed to be about the social good in a very, very dramatic and categorical way. So that's what I think is learning today. It's not about you. It's about how all of us work together to solve our problems. And that's why at Ubiquity University, we link the head and the heart and the hands. What you know needs to contribute to your growth, and what you know and who you're becoming needs to be directed to working collaboratively to solve global problems, because we owe this to our children.
So what is the vision of Ubiquity University?
Well, we want to prepare the emerging generation with the mindsets and skill sets and tool sets they need, not only to navigate hypercomplexity, to come together with their peers to solve these challenges. And to do that, we emphasize teaching soft skills. You can study electrical engineering at MIT or Harvard or Caltech. But what you need are life skills. So if you go to Ubiquity, you're going to see a lot of life skills courses, a lot of soft skill courses. How do you become a better person? How do you activate all of your different intelligences? The prevailing institutions teach as if there's only one kind of intelligence, and that's analytical, logical, left brain intelligence. But the science says we've got at least 9, 10, a dozen different intelligences. We have spiritual intelligence. We have artistic intelligence. We have kinetic intelligence. We have all kinds of different, we have collective intelligence. How do you work with others so that the collective intelligence is activated? Let me give you a quick example. Google, the highest tech company in the world. Do you know how they hire, who they hire? They don't hire people with degrees in electronics. They hire people who know how to get along well with others. And they've determined after significant research that the best people hire are people who have suffered. People who have suffered, empowered themselves, gotten over it. Because guess what? If you've gone through a profound trauma, suffering, a death family, an illness, some kind of trauma, and you've come out the other side, you're more empathetic, you're more understanding, you get along with others better, you're more cooperative, you're more creative in social groups.
Yeah.
So at Google, they hire you for who you are. And by the way, at Google, they say the worst people to hire are the guys from the Ivy League schools, the guys from Harvard and Yale. Why? Because they don't have any intellectual humility. When I was at Harvard, Harvard was the place to go to hire. But the world has fundamentally changed now. Then at Google, once you're hired because of your soft skills, then they train you in the hard skills. They send you to a university for the specific skills you need to do the jobs they want. But if you're in our world right now, 2/3 of the jobs that existed 10 to 15 years ago don't exist now. And 2/3 of the jobs that exist now won't exist in 10 years.
Yeah.
So why study hard skills at the university? Study the soft skills so you can laterally move into any new changing situation. So Ubiquity is not doing this just because of some idealistic imagination. We're doing it because this is what the world needs. And competencies. There's all kinds of competencies that can be learned now, that Ubiquity University is pioneering in the educational market.
So Jim, what are the challenges that you're facing? Either the pushback from the parents or the pushback from the political leaders or the political parties or the education system and education policies. So what kind of challenges are you experiencing while you are driving this initiative?
I think there are three challenges. One is the culture of education has been the same for so long that it has become ossified. And think about this for a minute. If technology hadn't changed in the last 2,000 years, we wouldn't be having this Zoom call. If medicine hadn't changed in the last 2,000 years, there'd be no vaccines possible for the pandemic. If economics hadn't changed in the last 2,000 years, we wouldn't have globalization. Every domain of human existence has changed except for education. We're still educating young people the way we did thousands of years ago. And that is not only changing radically in the last few years, but it is changing beyond recognition. So that's the first level, is the ossification of education. And now the radical transformation of education is causing a deconstruction and a reconstruction all at the same time. And that's a real challenge. And that leads to the second layer. And that is, what do you teach? If the old system of memorization, what do you teach and how do you teach it? And that is not an inconsequential question. How do you teach emotional intelligence? It's very easy to teach the facts about the French Revolution. You know, the French Revolution either started in 1789 or it didn't, and you can answer that on a test and it's right or wrong. But how do you teach anger management? How do you measure it? How do you assess it? That's a whole different level of mastery, is assessing soft skills, emotional skills. It can be done, but that's a real challenge in the global educational market. And then thirdly, particularly in a world that is burning, how do you teach young people the kind of competencies they need to solve global problems when for thousands of years education has only taught knowledge? Then how do you teach young people the competencies? And this is important, just to note, is that learning, memorizing for tests to get degrees are rapidly becoming obsolete. Company after company now are not asking people for their diplomas. They're asking people for their competency portfolios. They want to know what they can actually do, not where you came from. Because a degree from Harvard doesn't mean anything anymore. Are you competent enough to form a cross-boundary team in a global environment, think out of the box to solve a problem in the next 30 minutes? That's what the corporations need. They have people now from 50, 60, 70 countries all working together. How do you respect diversity? How do you respect male, female boundaries, ethnic differences, etc.? That's what the companies want. And so you've got a lot of issues starting from an ossified domain that's now radically changing to new methodologies that have to be established, that Ubiquity's been pioneering, to then how do you create the context so that people can come together to really take action in the world to solve global challenges. This is a big job. It's a wonderful time to be alive in education.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. And people are investing a lot of money where people are coming up with alternative ways of educating children. So there's a lot of work already happening. Now, if you reflect at your life, the kind of journey that you have traveled, having studied at Harvard and then Cambridge, and then walked the path that you have walked. Started several organizations, and today you run one of the biggest uh, movement in the world called Humanity Rising. And also, you're the president of Ubiquity University. Now, if you were to really wonder, sit alone and reflect, what do you wish you knew at 21?
I wish at 21 that I understood more clearly that the goal to which you dedicate yourself is not nearly as important as the means you use to get there. I've done a lot of damage to people, to myself, ruthlessly achieving what I thought was the goal. And because that's what I'd been taught. And as I look back over my life, I realized it wasn't worth it. In the end, it's how much you care for people. It's how compassionate you are with the stranger. Do you give money to the beggar? Do you stop to smell the roses, as they say? Can you just slow down far enough to center yourself more completely in this moment and not worry about the moment to come? I wish I'd have known that as much at age 21 as I do now. My life would have been softer, and I would have been happier, and I would have been more vulnerable to other people.
Yeah. It's so interesting because the journey that I'm on to right now, there were words which were just words for me. So for example, you use the word compassion. For me, at one point in time, the word compassion was just a word, well framed, hanging on the wall. Yeah. But as I'm walking this path, I'm redefining all these small words like compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, apology, kindness. And every day, every passing day, they are coming up with a new flavor, a new smell, a new color for me. And I'm realizing how important it is to be compassionate, as you just mentioned, how important it is to hand over something with respect to a beggar, how it's so important to just sit with somebody who's in deep grief or who is hurt. So thank you so much, Jim, for allowing me to validate the journey that I am on to. Now, Jim, if I were to ask you a last question, now with all the wisdom that you've been able to accumulate for yourself and the experiences that you've been able to experiment with in your life, what do you know for sure with 100% surety and certainty?
Well, I would say, Gaurav, I would have to follow Socrates here, that I know nothing. I think as one gets older, one surrenders the 100% certainty and becomes content, having been beaten up by your own certainties, to live in the question, not the answers. And so for me, I'm understanding less and less of what I thought to be previously categorically true. And I think that's what ignites humility. I think that's what unites wisdom. I think that's what helps to generate compassion. So I'm surrendering the certainties of youth and gaining the humility of the years, and realizing that in the end, the Beatles were right at the end of Abbey Road. The love you take is equal to the love you make.
Yeah, beautiful. So we started the conversation by saying the mystery of the silence, and we spoke about the wisdom of the action. And the way we are ending it now is the certainty of the youth and the wisdom and the maturity of aging. So thank you so much, Jim, for your time. I think it was a beautiful conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you. Me too.